Michael J. Whig Tory with the opinion. Okay, we're going to talk about why Pierre Poilievre is not qualified to lead this country. You heard me correctly. Say Pierre Poilievre is not qualified to lead this country. Furthermore, Doug Ford, who's called an election a year and a half early, has not canceled the Starlink contract. Elon Musk company, which is a national security risk. In Alberta, Danielle Smith, she's playing many sides of the fence and dealing in many ways exclusively with the U.S. on her own, much more than people realize. And Scott Moe of Saskatchewan, another conservative, is not really right on the Team Canada team. And this is where we've got an issue when we're dealing with the United States and Trump right now. So what I'd like to bring to your attention is, I've got to had it pulled up, but I just got to pull it up again. Yikes. Never there when you want it. Never there when you want it. I'm going to use Steve Boots because this guy makes he put together a very short and very compelling presentation to reinforce and substantiate and provide substance for my statements here and why I think conservatives are not qualified to help us out, especially during this situation right now. And that's where I'm at. I'm not going to give you some fluff. This is where it's at. Okay, so let's go to, I'm going to do the picture-in-picture.
Canada's facing a serious crisis. Our largest trading partner is just jumping from threat to threat. The U.S. promised to pause tariffs for 30 days, and then they announced more new tariffs, this time on steel and aluminum. And Canadians are concerned. There's a lot of uncertainty. The steel and aluminum sector is under threat. Workers' jobs are under threat. In the span of just a few weeks, Donald Trump has been doing everything he can to destabilize Canada, its economy, and its global partners. Canada needs serious leaders for this serious moment. So let's have a look at the two leaders most likely to lead Canada forward in these times: Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. You see, Pierre has recognized that Mark Carney is the most likely opponent for him, and so he's rolled out a new line of attack. He's come prepared, and this new message is going to turn this campaign around. Brace yourselves, folks. It's a biggie, and it is going to change the political landscape in Canada. It is shoes. Seriously, that is the best that Pierre Poilievre's got. He posted this to Twitter complaining about Mark Carney's
leather
shoes
triple
since they were
stitch
expensive. Seriously,
shoes.
Mark Carney made a public appearance wearing these shoes. They're called Zegna sneakers, and apparently they cost around $2,000. Ridiculous! How dare that very rich man own fancy things? Anything other than tattered New Balance 993s simply will not do. So Pierre Poilievre posted it saying, quote, "Trying to be a normal guy in $2,000 shoes. He's just like Justin." Which would be much, much more convincing if every public appearance that Poilievre has made lately, including the literal post before this one, all feature him in a $2,000 Canada Goose jacket. So $2,000 jacket, man of the people. $2,000 shoes, wildly out of touch. And this is ridiculous. It is an embarrassingly thin line of attack. But it's all Pierre Poilievre has, and that's what I want to really highlight here. Because the Poilievre and Carney campaigns are total contrasts to one another, and the results speak for themselves. The polling shift has been honestly like nothing I've ever seen. Poilievre is currently tracking towards the worst polling collapse in recent memory. The race is narrowing fast, and a new poll from Leger shows a potentially Carney-led Liberal Party winning a majority government. Think about that for a second. The Liberals were going to get wiped out. They were going to be in fourth place. The Carney effect's real, and it has absolutely transformed the Canadian political landscape. And there are a lot of reasons for it, but one that I want to highlight today is just their approach to politics. Poilievre has one mode, and it's all he's got. He attacks. Everything he says is an attack on someone or something. When he's giving a press conference...
Yeah, also, if you watch the Jordan B. Peterson interview with Poilievre, Poilievre said, "I look at my job as a prosecutor." Are you a leader of the country? But that's what he said. "I look at my job as a prosecutor. I direct my team to go over all the different clippings around the country, and then we itemize various things. And this is how the slogans come into play. So this is why he just comes up with a slogan, which is a trigger for the emotions of the electorate, the people. And this is what he's done. Nothing to do with how he's going to maneuver the landscape to make your life better, because he's got a limited bag of tricks. And you're starting to see that now that the Trump government, which is a conservative, Republican conservative government, in power now, and how they approach things. And this is the difference.
You can reliably expect him to attack at least one member of the press gallery for working for the liberal media or CBC. Every single time he mentions a political opponent, he's got a nickname for them. Carbon tax carnies, just like Justin, etc., etc. And he's got a slogan for everything. Bring it home, axe the tax, build the home, stop the crime, verb the noun, etc. And a big part of that is because Pierre Poilievre has a very specific political talent. He has figured out how to take people's anger and direct it. He has a knack for blame, and it's what he's focused on. And that works when people's frustrations are focused on domestic issues, which, until very recently, they were. But then three things happened that transformed the Canadian political landscape. Each of them, individually, would have been a huge shift, but three changes at once have left Poilievre unable to craft a message that resonates with voters. You see, Canadians' frustrations were really directed at two things: affordability and an out-of-touch liberal government. And both of those were easy to blame: Justin Trudeau and the carbon tax. And so the Conservatives focused everything.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The carbon tax, and this really got blown out of proportion. Everybody acts, carbon tax is not going to make you rich. And I'll tell you why. I have a very small carbon footprint, and it gives me extra money because of that basis. I've got a very small carbon footprint, so every 3 months or something like that, I get a small stipend. It's enough to buy a week's groceries or a little bit less, and that's it. It's not going to make me rich, but that was the carbon tax. It was needed because if you think of wildfires in Jasper and the ones in California, which just wiped out friggin' people's homes, made it into tinderbox, which was unbelievable. We've got an issue. And Steve Keen, an economist from Australia, has shown how that these politicians have been relying on data from economists instead of scientists and other type of dynamic economists to properly gauge how it affects society. And this is where they buy into this stuff, and this is where we got a serious problem with that. And even if this carbon tax gets set aside for a short period of time, we still got to figure out a way to deal with the climate change. And it's rather unfortunate because the carbon tax, the way it was designed, is not as bad as it's made out to be.
Everything on that. Axe the tax, down with Justin, etc., etc. And everything was about attaching people to Trudeau. Every time Poilievre talked about the Liberals, he'd make sure to attach whichever party was convenient to them. When he spoke in English, he'd call them the NDP Liberal Coalition, even though it wasn't a coalition. In French, it was the Bloc Libéral, because everyone's just a little bit liberal, it appears. But it was really all focused on Justin Trudeau and the carbon tax, which is the second part of Poilievre's focus. It was all about axing the tax. Gotta have that axe the tax election. So the Liberals changed the race completely when they took Trudeau and the carbon tax off the board. Poilievre's two primary attack lines pretty much dried up immediately. But more than that, they also changed the public perception of the Liberals quite abruptly. It's a lot harder to frame a party as being out of touch when they listen to the public and turf their leader in most unpopular policy. Although Poilievre's been trying, that's why he keeps insisting that everybody's just like Justin, because he's basically just the Joker without Batman now. It's just not the same. But there's a third change in the Canadian political landscape that has left Pierre Poilievre in an impossible position: the rise of Donald Trump and Elon Musk in the United States. Poilievre has framed himself as being a Trump and Musk-aligned candidate. He's talked about bringing Tesla factories to Canada, joked about having Elon Musk send his son to Mars, asked Elon Musk to go after CBC on Twitter, and more. And if you're going to claim that Poilievre has nothing to do with Trump, just know that both...
And here's the other thing, get rid of CBC. You need CBC, just like BBC. You see it down in the States where corporations own all the media outlets, and they're owned by billionaires, and this guy Donald Trump is actually threatening them. He's taking them to court muzzled them. They have to tailor their message around what he wants and not what should be facts for the general public. And this is a really interesting situation that's evolved in the U.S. with Trump, and he's bullying. He's trying to take over to Canada now. And it's a serious situation. It just cannot look at it lightly.
The Canadian Conservative Party and the American Republican Party are part of the International Democratic Union, led by Stephen Harper, which is an organization that coordinates conservative parties around the world. So, of course, the Conservatives have nothing to do with Trump's ideas except for all the ways that they are directly connected to Trump's ideas. Pay no attention to those. And that brings us to the change in the political landscape.
That's correct.
Trudeau's off the board, the carbon tax is off the board, and Donald Trump has flipped the board. And an outside attack on Canada has led to a fairly distinctive event. It's an idea that was originally coined in poli-sci in the 1970s called the Rally Around the Flag event. It was coined by a political scientist, John Muller, to talk about American...
Okay, I'm going to add one more thing, too, because the thing that Mark Carney has going for him, he acted as running the Bank of Canada and also the Bank of England. And he was able to stick handle through the 2008 financial fiasco, which can happen again because of the way Trump is deregulating a lot of institutions and government to protect the consumer and the country, and it's rather unfortunate. People don't see that.
American politics, but I think it's applicable here. It's the notion that in the face of a significant outside threat, countries tend to rally around leaders and institutions. It creates a short-lived window of national alignment and unity, and Mueller suggested 3 things that lead to the Rally Around the Flag event. The event is international, involves the United States, and particularly the president directly, although in this context it'd be Canada and the PM, but I think the point stands, and that it is specific, dramatic, and sharply focused. I'd suggest that the Trump tariff crisis meets these criteria. It is an international issue, involves the nation as a whole and its leader, and it's definitely specific, dramatic, and sharply focused. So in the face of this Rally Around the Flag effect, Poilievre's message and his approach are falling apart. And the reason why is pretty simple. His message essentially boils down to everything sucks. He has been relentlessly focused on everything he thinks is wrong, all the things that are bad and who's to blame. Spoiler alert, everything's Trudeau's fault and everyone he doesn't like is Trudeau. But what happens when you get in front of a podium and push your Canada's broken message during a moment of national unity? People don't much care for it, and it's showing up in the polls, and in increasingly desperate politicking from Pierre Poilievre. He went on a panicked last-minute trip to the Arctic to announce a harebrained scheme around a military base and slashing foreign aid.
Meanwhile, the people of Nunavut said they have no interest in that plan whatsoever.
He announced Trump-style declarations of simple solutions to complex problems, and perhaps most damning, capitulation. Every Canadian with a basic understanding of the situation knows that Donald Trump's tariffs aren't based in reason or reality. They are based on his moods and whims, and that trying to appease or satisfy him simply will not work because his demands will just change.
That's correct. He's going to continue moving the goalpost because what Trump wants to do, he wants to kneecap Canada economically so he can take it over. And here's the thing. You see this with Elon Musk down in the States now, and this is why it's good for you to see what's going on with this Trump government. They're taking Medicaid. They don't have, like you go to a, with OHIP and our medical situation, if you're hurt, you can go to a hospital. Down there, if you've got no coverage, they're taking away what limited little coverage they have for the people, and they're also taking away any Social Security benefits and safety nets to help people during trying times. And this is what's very, very dangerous, and this is what Elon Musk is doing and Trump is doing. And they're taking a cudgel to these institutions instead of looking at it from a proper financial audit position and looking at it that way. They're just friggin' destroying them, cutting them down to rubble, to nothing, which creates a big problem, and you're going to see the problem going ahead in the very near future. And the tariff problem, tariffs are going to create inflation, and inflation was a result of the pandemic that we got over. And the other thing is the pandemic, we had safety nets that helped us here in Canada. If we didn't have that, do you know how hard things would have been during that period of time? And this is another issue that I'm going to bring up. I'm going to pivot right now and explain exactly what I mean. Because, and I'm going to use Steve Boots because I set this aside from another video he did. Because of the pandemic, and now we're going to have these tariffs, which is going to put people out of work. So we need safety nets to help bridge the gap while we pivot our economy. Unless you want to be part of America. I don't want to be part of America. I lived down there. I played hockey down there. You go to a parking spot, you may take some guy thinks you took his parking spot, and you end up getting shot. And then if you got a hernia, you need a hernia operation. It's going to cost you $20,000 unless you have insurance. This is what it's like. You know, situation in Canada, we're very fortunate, very privileged to have what we have, and we've got to keep it and just make it better. So now let's go back to this one. And this is the point I want to make.
Specific and cryptic when it comes to what he would cut, but he's been abundantly clear he's going to cut a bunch of programs. But he likes to keep it vague, so he can cut whatever he feels like. The moment that always defined him in my mind was when he was asked about COVID support for individuals and businesses, and he essentially said that the Conservatives wouldn't have done anything. And when he was asked why, he just said, because we're Conservatives. Because Conservatives don't believe in small government. They are anti-government.
So there you go. So COVID-19, we were lucky. Liberals stepped up. NDP supported them. We had COVID safety nets in place to help the public. And we needed it because it could have been a lot worse than what it was. A lot of hardship for families. It was bad enough as it was. Now we're going to go through another similar, not similar, but different, but the cause and effect is going to be hard on the people of Canada. And this is why we need the safety nets. And this is what you have to understand. And this Pierre Poilievre going to leave you out in the cold. Doug Ford, Danielle Smith, Scott Moe, same thing. So that's the point. Questions, comments? Throw in the comments section. Love and peace to everybody. And stay safe. Talk to you all soon. And remember what my two buddies do when things get out of control.